You are listening to Animated Indulgence, the explicit and opinionated podcast where grown men talk about cartoons. Each episode will pick apart, analyze, and dissect an animated series or movie.
Warning, there will be spoilers, even potentially for shows and movies that are not the topic at hand.
We may watch cartoons, but we don't watch our language. Discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone to Animated Indulgence, where grown men talk about cartoons. Today we're discussing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Hi there, I'm Airhammer.
I'm Dais.
I'm Mojoric. And we have a guest today, Justin from the Fanholes. You want to say hi?
Hello, I'm coming to you all the way from Dimension X.
You want to just jump right into it?
Sure.
Let's go into spoiler free. So, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, as the original cartoon from the 80s, is a action comedy with an emphasis on the comedy. It's set in a weird stylized version of 80s New York City, where grannies on the street have machine guns and mugging people in the park is a career choice.
Yeah, it's very lighthearted and it's very much a Saturday morning cartoon. It's very easy to sit back and relax and enjoy without really, investing a lot into it. So it has that going for it. Not really much to spoil.
I think we could fit a lot in spoiler free if we wanted to, just because the continuity, while it exists, is mostly there for convenience. It's got a couple little mini-series in the first couple seasons that we watched, and while that's cool that they had ongoing story and there was certain turning points, nothing really felt much more than barely more than episodic.
Yeah, there's a few main events that happen and are notable, but other than that, it's just nice, fun, episodic romp. Yeah.
Fun is the operative word. It wants to be a fun show. The story takes a back seat to having an enjoyable time.
Yeah, so, like I said, there's not much to spoil, so we want to just jump right into what we expected from it?
Sure.
Warning, the spoiler-free section is now over. Continue listening at your own risk.
So, due to an exceptionally stupid error on my part, we have no expectations recording for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So instead, have this sound of me slapping myself. Before we go on and to talk about what we expected, I want to ask you, Justin, before you watched, if you can remember this far back, before you've seen anything Ninja Turtles, what were your first kind of experiences with the show?
I was probably about, I think I had just turned 5 years old when I discovered Ninja Turtles, so I was at the right age to find it and I guess be hit by all the marketing with toys and lunchboxes and breakfast cereal and all that. I've seen these episodes hundreds of times probably because I had them on VHS tape, and I remember getting a bunch of VHS tapes from the Burger King Kids Club because that was a reward. I'm very familiar with these episodes, but trying to think back to when I was 5 or 6, I just remember sitting down and watching every episode and just kind of wondering what character was going to show up, what character would show up that I had an action figure of, because to me that was the most exciting thing. I remember in season 2, the punk frogs show up, and I was super excited because I had those guys. They maybe they didn't look exactly like they did in the toys that I had, but I was still really excited. Dude, the punk frogs, they're awesome, and I've got them. I've got them right here, and I can recreate their battle with the turtles. So as a kid, it was just the unknown and the excitement of oh, what's gonna happen this episode? Is Shredder gonna conquer the world? Are Dimension X gonna invade and tear the place apart? It was always an exciting adventure, and you didn't know what was gonna happen. It might be some kind of weird Cthulhu monster in the subway of New York, or it could be anything. It could be a April turning into like a Catwoman or something. Like, it was always something bonkers. That's what I loved.
I was the same age, more or less, when Turtles launched, and the marketing hit me hard, and at first I didn't know what to make of it. I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I know these words, but together they don't make sense. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. There's a point where it hits a saturation where, okay, I like this, but don't love it, but man, it's everywhere, so I'm talking about it all the time. I like it more because I'm talking about it. Oh, there's new episodes? Okay, I really like this. It just sort of, that snowball effect on me.
Feedback loop.
Yeah, a positive feedback loop. And that's always a good feeling. Whether or not it was engineered or natural, it's always a good feeling when you get that going. Especially as a kid where you don't have all that much to talk about. I think my expectations going back to it, because I haven't seen these episodes hundreds of times. I've seen them dozens of times back in the 80s, early 90s, but there's been at least 15 years since I've seen any of them. They definitely still have that corny feeling, and I'm going to be honest, I wasn't thoroughly entertained the way I was hoping I would be, but after the doldrums of actually sitting through the episodes wore off, I'm right back to that joy of the show. It was sort of a bitter taste watching, but I'm right back to that sweet aftertaste.
My recording on the expectations segment, I kind of talked about various things, but the biggest deviation from what I expected, I guess, is I really did not expect the dynamic between Shredder and Krang. This is my biggest foray into Ninja Turtles outside of watching a couple of the old 90s live-action movies. This is my biggest dip into the Ninja Turtles franchise. And I knew of Shredder, and I knew of Krang, of course, but I always just kind of assumed in the back of my mind that Krang was kind of a minion material. He played second fiddle to Shredder, and Shredder was the big bad. I was really surprised by how it starts out with reversed and then kind of leads into a bickering couple. They're both kind of on par with each other, but even that surprised me. All the media and stuff that I've been slammed with without actually having dipped my toes into the Ninja Turtles had pointed to the fact that Shredder's the big bad. He is a big bad, but he's not the big bad. I thought that was interesting. Deviation from what I expected.
I feel the same way with G.I. Joe. I know to go off topic with a different cartoon, but I wasn't really a G.I. Joe viewer when I was a kid. I would see snippets of it from Transformers FHE VHS tapes, and whenever I saw the music videos or the advertisements, I always thought that Destro was the big bad, and I didn't realize that it was Cobra Commander the entire time, because they put so much emphasis on Destro. Yeah, I don't remember what I said in my expectations, but Turtles came out when I was like 4 years old, and I don't think I questioned it. I just watched it. I remember enjoying it a lot more back then. It's still good now. I remember that crossover that came out a few years ago where you had the current generation Turtles that went back through some portal and wound up in the 80s Turtles universe, and they played up the corniness a lot more.
Yeah. Well, this iteration of Turtles is actually crossed over with two different iterations of Ninja Turtles, 2003 and 2013. Is it the newest one?
Yeah.
So yeah, they've crossed over. Ninja Turtles, to be honest, between the comic books and the various series, has crossed over with almost everything known to man. Like, holy shit, it's bonkers. I was doing a little bit of research into it. It's nuts. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, we have the crossover with Batman that we did on the Fanholes recording, which you'll be hearing around the same time this comes out.
My expectation, other than the villain thing, it pretty much lived up exactly to what I was expecting. Campy, 90s, Saturday morning, cartoon, action. It's a stereotypical Saturday morning boys cartoon. You have a bunch of heroes that go and beat up bad guys, and reset at the end of the night. Boom. Back to the beginning of the next episode, for the most part. So yeah, my expectations are that. Kind of led up to exactly what I expected.
The characters then. I guess we should start with talking about the Ninja Turtles themselves.
Yeah, that's probably the best part to leave it. The titular main point of the show, yeah.
Yeah, we got Leonardo. He wears blue. He's got katanas. He's the serious leader.
Serious is the right word for that. I really feel like that's a good way to put it. And in a zany show, it's hard to be super serious. He doesn't come off as out of place serious, but he gets things done. I think that's the way I saw him.
After we go through all four Turtles, I have a question to propose to you guys. Up next, we have Donatello. He's purple, and he's kind of the geeky tech guy.
He does machines, and
Yes.
don't look that up on a website.
Yeah.
Yes. Unless you're into that kind of thing. I mean, who are we to judge?
That's a very specific fetish. A mutant teenage turtle fucking a machine of some sort. Is assuming what you're going along with this, and
Well, the operative
Very-
was teenage. I think he's probably underage.
yeah, fair enough.
So he's built up as a engineering and technological genius, who is also a turtle, who is also a ninja, who is also a sewer dweller.
And also
which
loves
makes you
pizza.
wonder, which makes you wonder how he got that set of skills.
I don't know.
But Donatello is very much the problem solver of the entire show. In so many episodes, there's Deus Ex Donatello, where he just comes in and reprograms something or has a gadget that solves the problem. He saves the world by himself, well, almost by himself, so many times.
I like how in the episode New York's Shiniest, he's working on the Rex robot, and his solution to fix it, he just opens him up and puts in some VHS tapes. That pretty much does it. That's great. And of course it goes through all these 80s stereotypes where he's doing aerobics and a Clint Eastwood type thing. I was cracking up at that. He saved the world by putting VHS tapes in a robot.
Probably one of the few times the world has been saved by the power of VHS.
I don't know. I mean, the VHS giveth and the VHS taketh away. Anytime some lives are put in danger by a VHS, then you have to think that lives are going to be restored in some way.
There's the good and evil VHS tapes, huh?
Yeah. Oh, we're talking about Donatello. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else much is there to say about him? He's a smart guy.
He uses a wooden bow, which is known as one of the cheapest weapons to use in the video games.
Yeah.
It
has range.
We have Raphael. He wears red. He uses size. He likes to break the fourth wall. And he's often confused for Leonardo in this cartoon, as Leonardo's voice typically comes out of him. And in one scene, he even gets a blue bandana while standing directly next to Leonardo. I've nicknamed him Rafnardo.
And I've also noticed, it seems like he's the default model. A lot of times another turtle will be supposed to be doing something that will be him instead.
That makes a lot of sense, because the original comic had all the turtles wearing red.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, he's definitely, if you see the wrong turtle in the wrong place, there's a good chance it's going to be him somewhere where he's not supposed to be. And that happens
There's a
lot.
lot of Raphaels. There's a lot of Raphaels.
That has nothing to do with this character, but felt like I bringing it up here.
Well, as it stands, he's meant to be sort of the wisecracking, attitude-driven turtle.
He is
Honestly,
cool but crude.
I think a lot of how much you like Raphael is going to depend on whether his jokes land for you. And it was a little flat for me as an adult viewer.
Yeah, what's funny is, as a kid, Raphael was always my favorite. But as an adult, I like Michelangelo. And I kind of feel the same, going back and watching these. I'm just man, why did I ever even like Raphael? Michelangelo's the man, really.
Raphael has very on-the-nose sarcasm. It is super, super transparent. You know he's being sarcastic. And that's convenient because there's going to be kids viewing. But, man, when he's sarcastic, it's like flipping a switch. There's no subtlety.
I mean, he even threatens someone with that in an episode. They're like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'll get sarcastic. That's his threat.
Well, he was also holding up a weapon.
Yeah.
I actually kind of liked that. That was one of his most badass scenes, to be honest. But yeah, he's supposed to be the tough guy. He's supposed to be crude. He's supposed to be sort of the naughty bad boy of the group. But I don't think it comes off in the cartoon so well.
Yeah, at least not in the sample size that we have. Or at least not in the 18 episodes we watched. I have this idea of what Raphael, I guess it kind of fit in expectations as well, but I didn't think about it. But Along with Shredder being the big bad, another one of those expectations that are ingrained just by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, things I happen to know without having experienced it myself, is that Raphael is like the edgy turtle that's always off doing his own thing, trying to be the leader when he's not designated leader. There's always supposed to be this tension between him and the other turtles. That's what I was led to believe from some of the random episodes I've seen of the other shows. I would kind of expect some of that too, but you don't really see that here, so it's kind of interesting. That came later, I guess.
He's less of an edgy, angsty teenager and more of a stand-up comedian.
Yeah. I guess that just leaves us with Michelangelo for the last turtle.
Who is the comedian, yes. He loves pizza, he wears orange, uses nunchucks that are so strong they can go through solid steel. I still can't understand that.
I like to put forward this idea. Michelangelo, like Shaggy, is one of those stoners are not a stoner. Like, you'll never see them actually being a stoner, but just the way he acts and the things he eats. I guess all the turtles do, but Michelangelo in particular, he's one of those non-stoner stoners.
Definitely. I didn't see it as a kid, but man, I see it now.
In that Don't Do Drugs special that came out many years ago, Michelangelo was the turtle of choice that they put in there, and Shaggy wasn't shown, so we can see why.
Michelangelo was also prone to spout like every 80s catchphrase and buzzword imaginable, which made me in turn repeat all of those.
Yeah, it's thanks to Michelangelo that we have cowabunga as part of our vocabulary.
What was his tagline during the intro?
He's a party dude.
Party dude.
Yeah.
Which explains him, pretty well. He's all about the pizza. Like, while all the other turtles like pizza, Michelangelo loves pizza.
He's sort of got this surfer feel, too.
Yeah.
Laid back, he's wild, but not in a aggressive way. He's definitely a lot more enjoyable for me now than he was back when I was a kid watching, because he's not really a man of action. Michelangelo goes with the flow, and I wanted to see very active characters when I was a kid.
Fair enough. So before we go into the rest of the characters, I wanted to say something here. Maybe it's just because my small sample size, because I haven't seen tons of episodes. Besides like their major traits and their weapons, a lot of times the turtles seem kind of samey to me. Do they differentiate themselves and get more like stand out traits later in this as the series itself goes on? I'm just curious.
I think their characterization stays pretty thorough.
Yeah.
I think they get their moments though. As the episodes progress, they'll get their individual moments to help define them.
Right.
Yeah. From what I've known of, what I've gotten from my research is that starting around season 8, they begin to adapt more of their movie characterization.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's around that time where they kind of drop Shredder and Crane, and they adopt Lord Dredge as the reoccurring bad guy. They become a little bit more serious. I mean, they still have fun and are goofy, but they kind of lose a lot of that whole like, oh man, totally tubular, let's have a slice of pizza. Like they kind of drop all that constant,
Partying
back and forth. Yeah, they kind of drop that, and the animation even changes. Like the animation even looks a bit, I don't want to say sinister, but like more serious, kind of like dark and brooding, maybe more like Batman the Animated Series influenced it a little bit.
Huh.
Well, but then we've got to talk about that because it would have been 8 years in. They'd have had probably the second live action movie by then. So the times were changing. By that time, we were talking about 95. Kids' properties were getting more edgy, and they probably wanted to adapt and stay current.
Yeah,
that's
makes sense.
Pure speculation, but it makes sense for a long-running show like that to change in some way or another. It couldn't have kept recycling the same ideas for 8 years and kept going as it was.
And it goes along with my theory that kids programming as a whole has been going towards a trend of being more serious, more giving kids more credit with the stuff that they can enjoy. Not everything has to be slapstick, silly cartoons anymore.
I'd like to think that our writing tactics and styles for kids shows, as well as the effort put in, has increased, and that's given rise to a lot of more serious topics that kids have been able to partake in. I think also, in a lot of ways, these shows try to grow up with their audience, So a few years in, if a show wants to tackle something a bit more serious, they have to account for the fact that 8-year-olds that began watching are now 10.
Yeah, fair enough. There's that too, I guess. Growing up with the audience, it's interesting how some shows very much do that. Say with this one, if by season 8 it's dramatic, it's darker in tone, it's grown up with its audience, while other shows don't. Say like Pokemon. Pokemon's perpetually aimed at the new generation of 10-year-olds. It's interesting how some shows do it and some shows don't.
Yeah, Pokemon keeps casting the net to the same 10-year-olds to the new cycle and letting them go when they get bored with it, whereas a lot of shows like Ninja Turtles obviously tried to grow up with their audience a little bit while remaining a kid's show. But it was interesting to me as a kid because I sort of stopped watching before they got to the Lord Drag section. So when you get to those later episodes, I don't know the first thing about them. I think by then it had shifted so much. The live action movies had made such an imprint on me, and all the stuff, all the merchandising had left its mark that, to me, Ninja Turtles had cemented itself as this idea of these early seasons, which I was really happy to get into here.
It's interesting because when you talk about those later seasons, like I was still watching those seasons, but as far as buying the comics and reading them, or even buying the toys, like I wasn't doing that anymore. I can't explain it either. I mean, like I was still, probably teenager at the time, so and then I was buying like a lot of Marvel and DC toys and like Star Trek action figures and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, I was just content with watching the cartoon series, and that was enough. And I don't know, I don't know what caused that shift in me, but it was there. Like I would go to the store, and I would look at the big pegs of action figures, and I would see Turtles and go, okay, like, oh, they got like they're sports heroes, or they're Star Trek characters for whatever reason, or they're riding dinosaurs. I'm like, okay, this weird and wacky and kooky, but it is what it is. And then you like look over and you see like, oh, like Star Trek: The Next Generation, or like Superman line of figures, and I would gravitate more towards that.
I think that's a good point. While the franchise has shifted and rebooted and obviously tried to grow with its audiences over time, it's an evergreen franchise, so there's been something along the way the entire run. It's a franchise where the characters have had their feet firmly planted in their characterization and not tried to move. So all these characters that we're talking about, they, as I said, they have their moments in episodes, but they're characterized very consistently throughout. You never see Donatello suddenly just jump kicking and being a wild man and rampaging about for no reason. If that happens, it's a plot point. You'll never see Michelangelo be mechanically savvy like Donatello unless it's an animation error. So how well these characters are established in their series is super important for how they set this up. So the characterizations in the show are really, really well done. I think that's something I probably didn't give enough credit to, and it's not now until I start talking about it that I realize how the characterizations are so important, the cornerstone of the show, really.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about the Turtles, but do you want to move on to some of the other characters?
Well, yeah, we could finish off the protagonists. We have Splinter. He is the would-be father of the Turtles, a middle-aged man called Hamato Yoshi, who turned into a rat.
The same accident that made the Turtles humanoid made him half rodent. He's basically the only one to have truly badass moments, and the only one able to take things fully seriously without the humor inching its way in. He's a really, really good support character because of that, and it makes him seem very important because when he gets involved, things are serious. Portrayed as a wise character, kindly. The fact that he was a ninja, you wouldn't have guessed it except for the fact that he can fight.
And he likes sushi.
That's true. Anybody can like. I've tried sushi. It's not my thing, but I've tried it. Don't think I would eat it in the sewer. Just something about that, right?
No, I don't think I'd eat anything in the sewer unless, last resort.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of sewer talk coming up in the later sections.
Let's see, we have April McNeil?
April O'Neil. She's a big-breasted redhead in a yellow jumpsuit that gets in trouble all the time.
In a lot of ways, she's kind of our viewer's eye into the world, if you will. She's the one there for the Turtles to have to explain things to.
Yeah, I guess you try to identify with her because she's
our viewer and stand-in, if you will. That's the word.
Yeah.
I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, she kind of gets replaced as that for that one chick that looks like the chickmunk.
Irma. Yeah.
Irma, who is so like boy crazy, she'll even go out with like a robot.
Yeah.
April is interesting because in a boys show, your viewer proxy is a female character, and that's interesting because while they have to have some sort of female presence, otherwise it'd just be weird. It's interesting that they actually chose the viewer proxy to be female and then replaced her with another female. I don't think that April is particularly girly in any way, but it really was an odd choice that I'm surprised worked out so well. April's a very likable character. She's a little ditzy, but I would say in this satirical version of New York, she's a little above average in intelligence. She's sort of a thrill seeker too. She's a news reporter and definitely looks for trouble.
Yeah, she's definitely I don't know, she's a good stand-in. I really don't have much to say about her. She's just kind of there a lot of the time, in my opinion. But
yeah, she's the damsel.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you guys are not giving her enough credit. There's a lot about April O'Neil that could have been different, could have been much, much worse. The fact that she's an active character, the fact that she's not always crying out for the Turtles to help her, the fact that she's willing to get herself into trouble for their behalf, for the sake of her career, the fact that she's ambitious, willing to do something exciting, that means a lot in a kid's cartoon.
Fair enough. It's just in a world where you have literal Ninja Turtles, a giant rat, Uncle Phil running around in a fucking cheese grater outfit, a meat wad and a robot, a fucking giant anthropomorphized rhino. She's just hard to find interesting.
I don't know. She's a big titty, tall redhead. I was pretty interested.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Speaking
we can transition we can transition into our villains now with Uncle Phil. Oroku Saki becomes the Shredder. What do we really know about him? He's voiced by Uncle Phil, yes.
So backstory, like the day before we did our viewing of Ninja Turtles, or the first season, the day before we did our viewing of the first season, I just by random happenstance happened to watch a few episodes of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air an hour before we watched the first season of Ninja Turtles. And I will probably never unhear like Uncle Phil's voice. Like I can't. It's just there.
It's also very convenient because the first episode that you see gives the protagonist's origin, and it's the story of how Hamato's Yoshi's life got turned upside down.
But yeah, he's a ninja. He has this like spiky motif going on. He's always wearing a mask. He is the most... I know the Turtles themselves are the most iconic, but besides them, he's the most iconic thing to come out of Ninja Turtles for me. Like, visually, anyway. Yeah, he's just all around a fun character. He's a super over-the-top, like, dramatic Saturday morning cartoon villain. Like, there's not much else I could say about him, really. He's just over-the-top villainy bad guy.
You try to understand his motives because he travels from Japan to New York and just seemingly happens to come across Yoshi, who he got thrown out all those years ago, and now he kind of has this vendetta to kill him, but you don't really know why.
Because he's a Saturday morning cartoon villain. What else reason does he need?
And he surrounds himself with bumbling idiots, yes.
Yep.
He's just fun to watch because you never really know what he's going to do because his plans are so varied. It could be like, we're going to like steal all the electricity from the city to power the Technodrome. Okay. And then maybe a couple episodes before that, he's going to use a magic spell. And it's so weird because he's the master ninja. And in the first season, clearly he has an aptitude for like chemistry and engineering because we see him like building all kinds of things.
Let's face it, he has knowledge and power in anything that would make plot convenience. We went into this plot about visiting Mars. How are we going to get how about Shredder and his spaceship take the Turtles to Mars? Like, Shredder doesn't have a spaceship. Well, now he does.
Well, like, I guess the greatest thing, though, is his voice. Like James Avery does such a great job as the voice.
Oh, it's so good, yeah.
And I love how whenever his plan is foiled, he has such a great this sound of rage at the end because he'll go ah! I mean, I can't recreate it at all. But he also has like these really great off the wall insults. Like there's one episode, I forget which one it was, but someone does something, someone screws up, and he goes, "Ah, useless jellyfish." I was like, what?
I know it's cliched, but I love how his obsession with turtle soup.
Everything about Shredder is terrific. He's the star of the show, really. At least as an adult. He's a bumbling idiot and a punchline to every joke, but he somehow is also competent and threatening. He's a technical genius and also a ninja.
He's a man of many talents.
Every class that Donatello got A's on, he got B+. He really is the heart of this show. I love the Turtles, but man, Shredder makes this worth watching. And for me, you guys have already mentioned his voice acting and it's superb, but for me, when he is defeated, when it says, "Oh no," oh, that's the best. It's on par with Rita Repulsa.
Yeah, it is.
This guy is such an iconic cartoon villain. He is on first name basis with Skeletor. They hang out all the time. Shredder is a really excellent character that we could probably spend a long time talking about if we wanted.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should move on to Krang.
Yeah.
He's a talking alien head from Dimension X.
So, I'll be honest here. I want to like Krang, but, I just find him more obnoxious than anything else. It takes so long for him to spit anything out. I know it's his thing. It's just come on, Krang, shut up already. Just get it over with. They get it better by the end of the first season. Yeah, Krang's probably my least favorite character, but, he's this blob from Dimension X, right?
He's a brain. Did I call him a head? He's a brain, yeah.
He's just a disembodied brain that lives in the android being that has a face but never talks.
For the most part, we know that he used to have a body back in Dimension X, but it was destroyed and he was banished to Earth.
That always kind of fascinated me as a kid because you get that dialogue in the first season. And I was always kind of curious. I was like, well, what did his original body look like? Did it look kind of like the suit that Shredder completed for him, or was it totally different? I kept waiting for some kind of flashback episode to where
it's never established on in all 10 seasons.
As far as I know, no. I don't think it was
established in the 2015 crossover episode with the new. It actually does establish that yes, he is from that same Dimension X. Yes, he was banished by his own kind, and they all have robot bodies too, so it's easy to see what his original robot body looks like. He never actually had a physical body. All the Krang just look like that.
They're just brain.
When he says he wants a new body, he means he wants a new robot body because his got taken away from him.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't find out for a decade in another show that does a crossover episode that, this Krang just wants a new robot body. He's not some disembodied brain that's been cast out from body. He's not the ruler of Dimension X. He is one of the rulers of Dimension X. He's the yin to Shredder's yang. The two are a pair. Mojo, you said before that they're a bickering couple, and yeah, they absolutely are. He's Shredder's hetero life mate.
He starts out very dominating over Shredder, but that evens out as season 2 goes on.
Yeah, they have a rocky start to their relationship.
Besides these guys, though, those are the main characters. There's some background.
We can talk about our side mutants.
The side mutants. There's Bebop, Rocksteady, and
Baxter Stockman. Yeah.
Here comes the Fly guy.
Yes.
That's it, guys. That's the one spoiler after spoiler free that we had to shield from you.
Yeah.
That's it.
There you go.
Okay.
I can't think of anything else that you could possibly spoil for the first 2 seasons, at least.
Yeah, so in our first episode, we see that Shredder is hired some thugs from the New York streets to do his dirty work, and within the next 2 episodes, he realizes that the Turtles are kind of outmatching all of his guys and all of his robots, and so he steals a warthog and a rhinoceros from the zoo, uses the mutagen that he has on him, and transforms 2 of his goons, Rocksteady and Bebop, into those animals. They're bumbling idiots.
Yeah, and we love them for it. That does bring up something, though, that I guess it fits here in characters. I was surprised by how the minions of the bad guys, the Foot Clan or whatever, are all robots for the most part, was something that caught me off guard. It's a small little mini thing. I didn't realize that.
I'd like to think it's mostly for the purpose of cartoon violence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't occur to me that would be a thing until after I got a couple episodes into the show. I'm like, oh, they're fighting robots all the time. It makes sense, but like I said, I'd seen some of the live action movies, and they have actual people as the Foot Ninjas in those, right?
Yes. As we see in the flashback, the Foot Clan actually was human to begin with until Shredder met Krang, and then they started using androids.
Yeah, I remember that.
Something I noticed in season 1 is you see like several realistic looking guns, you know, like the old granny with her Uzi or whatever. I think one of the street punks has like a revolver. Like in season 2, everything is like designed to look like a toy and it shoots lasers.
Yeah, I think that really, really leads into the fact that season 1 is like a pilot. It's just like, hey guys, here's this thing. If it sticks and you like it, we'll make more. And probably before they got the green light to do more, they're like, okay, we like this. You know, let's tone this down. Let's turn the guns into like laser rifles and making them more toy-like you said.
Yeah, that's probably what happened exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we exhausted characters.
Well, there's side
pretty
characters.
much.
There's Vernon and Burn. There's Irma. They're just humans. They are reoccurring and kind of annoying, but there's nothing really special about them. They're a little dumb in their own unique ways.
Yeah, Vernon's basically a coward. Irma is lovesick, and Burn Thompson at first a chipmunk. In episode 6, I said to myself, he's just transformed into J. Jonah Jameson, and he treats the Turtles the way that Jay would do the same to Spider-Man.
Oh, that's exactly his inspiration. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, the director guy at the TV studio. The guy that was like fucking hating on Turtles so he can get some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was totally getting some in the back room every time he went back there. You know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. That was quite the dumb blonde that they threw in there. Yeah. Only other human is Baxter Stockman, who is Shredder's bumbling scientist who later is cross-mutated with a fly in a transportation accident. And at first kind of has a bit of amnesia, and Shredder kind of tricks him into thinking that the Turtles did it, so he joins his side once again.
Yeah,
There's one other character I'd like to discuss, and it's a character we didn't get to see, but is kind of iconic to Turtles as a franchise, and that's Casey Jones. In these first 18 episodes, we didn't get any Casey Jones, and that by itself is noteworthy. He is such a core character. I was shocked we didn't see him. Man, it feels odd that we get the mutant frogs in an episode and anything showing up before Casey Jones, because he is the 7th protagonist, more or less. He's right there behind April and Splinter. So it was odd to have him excluded from these first 2 seasons.
Yeah, I didn't really catch it because I'm not very familiar with the franchise, or I didn't realize it was that big a deal. I did notice that he wasn't there because I knew of him, of course, but I didn't know it was that big a deal. I thought he was always kind of a sporadic guy.
Well, he is, but still, you would think that he would show up earlier.
Fair enough. Oh, anyway, think we exhausted characters?
Pretty much. Okay, on to plot.
What is there to say about plot in general in this show? I mean, there is some. The first 5 estodes are a mini-series. The plot and story itself is pretty much summed up, and after that, it's all, for the most part, episodic.
Yeah, so we have Hamato Yoshi and Orokusaki. They're both part of the Foot Clan in Japan, and Saki he wants control. He wants power. He sets up Yoshi for being seen as a traitor and gets ultimately kicked out. Yoshi then travels to America and goes to New York, but he doesn't have a cent to his name, so he lives in the very bright and colorful clean sewers. Over the years, Saki eventually does take over the Foot Clan, brings them to America, and they start to commit crimes. Somewhere among this, he meets up with Krang, who came over from Dimension X and shares his technology, to which Saki, now under the guise of the Shredder, finds his old nemesis, attempts to kill him with the mutagen, but winds up simply mutating him in the Turtles, who later grow up and become his adversaries. That's your general start up to the series.
And that's as far as the first 2 seasons, the vast majority of the plot. There's a little sub-arc about Krang sticking around in Dimension X, making Shredder prove himself. There's a little sub-arc revolving around that, but that's basically it. There's not much. There's also this bizarre sub-arc about an alien dying and spreading some crystal fragments.
That was weird.
Very
That was
weird.
weirder.
Yeah.
Even for Ninja Turtles, that was
That was
weird.
very weird. Felt like I was watching a
guess that-
chunk of, fucking Sailor Moon or something.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about the plot being there for the convenience of the writers rather than the enjoyment of the viewers. Nobody even batted an eye at, oh my god, we just met extraterrestrial life. This living being died in front of us. At no point in the future did they ever even consider that alien. It was 2 minutes later, and he may as well have not existed.
They so much stuff is just shrugged off. When Braxter becomes a fly, he accepts it so fast. She's like, oh, I'm a fly now.
Well, half his brain has always been fly. He's mutated.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, no, you're right. Just Baxter equals bad guy because story. Never mind his tragedy, the fact that he was put in an insane asylum because he claimed he saw Ninja Turtles that ruined his business because Shredder got involved and made him look like a criminal, and because Shredder broke him out of the asylum and forced him into this stupid revenge plot because Shredder sacrificed him and Krang tried to murder him in cold blood. No, forget that tragedy. He's just a bad.
I always felt bad for him because even in the miniseries, the Turtles basically steal his van and turn it into the Turtle van. And then they steal everything in his lab to build the turtle blimp and everything. I mean, they didn't even stop and say, "Hey, should we not steal from this guy?" No, they just took everything.
The Turtles just straight up stole that.
Because Donatello was like, "Wow, look at all this great stuff," and I was just like, "Yeah, it's not yours, man."
He's a teenager. He's not going to do any time. He's going to go to juvie. No, there's no major theme or statement that they're trying to make. It's just purely entertainment show. It's okay.
Anything can happen at any moment.
Yeah, I think the influences of it and the tones that they present are a lot more interesting. It's definitely got a absurdist sci-fi tone more than anything else.
Sci-fi fantasy, there's some magic and stuff too.
A little bit of that.
Yeah, we can probably transition into that now because I have a lot to talk about it.
My main point here for this, inspirations, influences, and references is obviously the original comic. Obviously.
Sort of.
The original comic has its own things, but it's based on the original comic, but unlike it, it's a lot more, from what I've gathered at least, seems a lot more lighthearted. It's also, wasn't the original comic a parody of superhero shows at the time? Daredevil in particular, I think?
Yeah, Daredevil was probably the biggest one, and then I guess also Teen Titans probably, because Teen Titans was huge in the 80s.
Yeah, I had trouble writing notes on the inspirations for this show in particular, because I know it counts in a way, but at the same time, it's hard to find for specifically the show and not stuff that is specific to the comic book. And I was struggling with that. Did you guys find anything interesting?
Yeah, I think just from watching it, the ideas that they pulled from old pulp sci-fi pop culture came through brilliant. It is absolutely meant to be this B-movie satire, and it works. It's got references to Star Trek all the time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even on their television, they watch these old horror science fiction shows and movies. Everything about this oozes a kid-friendly parody of all those old movies. And even going back to stuff like Flash Gordon, I saw a little bit of influences from that. They really, really tried to put little elements of what they loved in without being too obvious in where it came from. To me, the biggest thing that jumped out is this feels like a contemporary of Ghostbusters, where there's just this feeling of the age, this zeitgeist of late 80s, of weird, absurdist, borderline gross out, but not really gross out action comedy going on. It certainly feels that way with the 14 members, and I don't think it was really planned to be that way. It came out around the same time. Maybe they said, oh, hey, this Ghostbusters movie is popular. Let's throw in a little bit of that. I don't think they meant to parallel Ghostbusters as heavily as it did.
Yeah. I guess I can kind of see a similarity to Ghostbusters. I wonder if that is purposeful or they're both influenced from the same type of source material.
I did always kind of wonder how they went from this very dark and gritty, serious comic, how did they go from that to the television series that we got? Because
Toys.
there had to, I mean, yeah, but like when you think about it, like they totally took the concept of the comic and they stripped away all the like, you know, grittiness and the violence and brutality. Maybe they used Ghostbusters as an influence. I don't know, but like what you get is something totally different from the comic, and that was always kind of interesting to me because they're just so different. And I mean, even when they show up in the Ninja Turtles Forever, you know, you have the 2K Turtles and the 80s Turtles interacting with the black and white Turtles.
Yeah, the comic book Turtles.
The contrast is like so like night and day. Like they're just. But I don't know. I was just always very kind of interested in how like that ended up because they're just so different and from like night and day.
I don't know the story behind it, but I know this isn't the time in media that something has been appropriated and made more family friendly for the purposes of making money. I mean, if you think about the Adam West Batman show, that's the exact same situation we have here. I've actually used that example.
That's actually
before.
really good.
Really
good comparison.
Yeah, I think that was maybe the first or at least the most major case of something being made family friendly for the sake of commercialism. And that's the exact same thing we got with Ninja Turtles. They got a property that was edgy and weird. I don't know why they chose that property, but they changed things about it and they marketed it so it became way more kid friendly. And I think it's miraculous that it stuck, that it became a sensation. I don't know how the original comic book creators felt then, how they feel now about it. I can't imagine they were very happy about their gritty, satirical comic book turning into a kid's cartoon that was a shadow of itself. And I don't know how they felt about it becoming a sensation that a lot of kids loved and becoming a franchise, but I have a feeling they probably went through an emotional roller coaster over the first few years.
There could be all kinds of different ways to react to that.
I'd say like buttloads of money helped them deal with that.
Yeah, probably. Buttloads of money will help with a lot of things. What did you have to say on this subject, Airhammer? You said you had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's a number of episodes from season 2. Each episode would be influenced by a different property. So episode 8, for example, we have this alien plant that made me think of Little Shop of Horrors with Audrey 2. In episode 9, we have this computer that Shredder's using to try and destroy the Turtles. It kind of reminded me of Torque 3 from that one Transformers episode in season 2. And then in episode 11, we have...
You're like a Transformers encyclopedia.
Yeah. In episode 11, we have the xenomorph aliens that come out of the meatball eggs.
Yeah.
Episode 12, we have Baxter Stockman turning into the Fly, which is kind of reminiscent of the Fly. Rex 1, the RoboCop from episode 15. So yeah, they throw in a lot of references there.
They're just trying to hit all the genre tropes. And I'm sure through the 10 seasons, there's way more of that.
In terms of other inspirations, I like to look at, what did the show inspire later on after it was made? Because we've had so many different cartoons after that show mutated.
Wasn't there a Sharks one?
Street Sharks was one. I would have to think Toxic Crusaders had something to do with the Ninja Turtles. We mentioned the alien with the crystal from episode 7. That had to inspire part of Men in Black. The fact that it's also in New York, I don't know. It fits for me.
I think that's just maybe.
There are so many derivative works of Ninja Turtles.
Biker Mice from Mars.
Thank you. Biker Mice.
Biker Mice from Mars. Is that on our list?
I think it is, but I'll add it if it isn't.
It doesn't need to be, actually, because we're just going to do an episode on... We're going to do an episode on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles knockoffs as one episode. We can't devote time to all of them.
There's probably more derivative works of Ninja Turtles than we even know about.
Okay, what we need to do is make a list of all of the Ninja Turtle knockoff shows and watch 2 or 3 episodes from each of them. Boom, podcast episode.
Get all the origin stories down. Okay.
And then, when you look at references, I mean, like, Ninja Turtles is everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
There are tons of them. So, like, you have the Samurai Pizza Cats. On Full House, Joey had Ninja Turtle pajamas.
That's just like being an
icon. Cultural.
Yeah. In Tiny Toons, instead of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they had the immature radioactive samurai slug. It was a favorite comic of Plucky's. Hell, even in one of our favorite video games right now, Terraria, there's a Ninja Turtle costume that you can wear. So yeah.
certainly become a cultural icon.
Big,
I
yes.
think as far as actual shows that it's been influence on, it's hard to pin it down without being derivative, right? I think anything that took a chance on something absurdist sci-fi probably got that push from Ninja Turtle success. Whether or not they were directly influenced,
especially at the time, or more close to the time of the launch of the original.
Yeah, they probably saw the success and were given more of a chance, or decided to take that risk based on the success of Ninja Turtles. I would say even actually a good example is the Earthworm Jim cartoon. That felt like such an extension of the idea of Ninja Turtles.
Fair enough. I don't know enough about it, but I could see it from just what I know about Earthworm Jim. I've played the game.
Think of that game, but made more family-friendly and accessible, just as absurd, things like that. The Battletoads, that's another derivative work.
Oh, yeah.
While mostly known as a video game, they did have a short-run cartoon.
Yeah, I don't know. There are definitely knockoffs, but there are a lot of things that are knockoff and more, I'm assuming, out there. I haven't watched them, so I don't know for sure, but I have to believe that all of them can't be cheap, shitty knockoffs that aren't worth watching. There's probably a few of them that are legitimately good on their own. I'm interested in seeing some of those.
Sure, there's a couple, but more than that, just the idea, the themes, the tone that Ninja Turtles brought, I think shaped early 90s cartoons. It shaped early Saturday morning cartoons. Whether or not it tried to be derivative, they definitely got in line. They fit within the mold that Ninja Turtles set with its huge success.
Oh yeah, it's definitely icon. I'd argue it might be one of the biggest icons we've covered on the show so far.
And that's the interesting thing about trying to find influence. It's so hard to pin down specific cases because the net is cast so wide.
Yeah.
We're having trouble picking out individual shows because its shadow is cast upon the entire landscape of popular cartoons at the time. It's as influential as Gundam. It also helps that Ninja Turtles has been an evergreen franchise. While the original show that we watched did end its run, they've done multiple shows, reboots, 2 series of live-action movies. It's extremely popular throughout the entire duration since this show began.
And the shows, all 3 shows, even the 2 discontinued ones, are still getting content in some ways, even if it's not their original medium. Like they're going to comic books instead of cartoons, but they're still getting stuff made. So that's interesting, at least. You mentioned that the show is canceled, but it's still alive in a way.
Yeah, it's heavily loaded up on the nostalgia train. And more than that, I think the fact that the characters are so similar throughout the multiple incarnations, that makes it identifiable. If you had a child sit down and watch this, it would be weird for them, but they would know the Turtles based on their color, their weapons, and how they act. Those characters are very knowable, even if they're not perfect one-to-one replicas. It's something that they've managed to establish in this show, the original show, so well that there's been little need to change.
Yeah. At this point, there's no way you could.
I've got a question. Since we're in the influences section, when would you guys say that the original Ninja Turtles influence started to wane? We talked about how the mid-90s cartoons, it was one of the guiding lights that a lot of the other shows flocked to and tried to replicate the success of. When did you think that sort of shifted away and that it finally got to level ground?
I think it started when Power Rangers took off, which is funny because Turtles, eventually had a crossover with like Power Rangers in space, but Power Rangers hit and it was such a huge, like unexpected thing. Kind of like Ninja Turtles, like when it hit, it became super popular. And then Power Rangers hit and like Power Rangers was like the new it thing. Like everyone was like running around at school, like it's Morphin time, Dragon's Doors and all that stuff. Whereas maybe a few years before that, people were like running around saying like, Cowabunga and stuff like that. Like I really think it was Power Rangers that kind of like helped like put Ninja Turtles like on its way like into the graveyard, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to agree and say 1993 was pretty much where it began to die down, as there were so many new programs coming out at that point that really just took over television. And at this point, I would say that probably the Ninja Turtle cartoon was really starting to wind down in
It wasn't new and exciting anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
People had seen it for a decade at that point, or whatever, or half a decade. So it wasn't this new, weirdly outrageous and strange thing.
It's obvious that other more popular shows would cause the popularity to decrease, but I think, yeah, you're right. Obviously, Power Rangers played a big part in it. And also, it's clearly not dead. The franchise going strong is...
Yeah, it's still going, so it's not dead. I'd say it seems like it had a time in the limelight where it was everywhere. It seemed like it was on top of the world, and then now it's still a big iconic piece of our culture, but maybe not so important anymore. I think, you know what? I'm having a thought now. I think Ninja Turtles has a lot in common with Spider-Man, and that Spider-Man was a big thing. Superhero stories weren't told that way. Right, and it was a big new thing, and Spider-Man was fucking everywhere, right? Spider-Man was a big fucking deal. You know, it was everywhere. But then eventually, you know, there's only so many times you could see Spider-Man beat up Dr. Octopus or Green Goblin or whatever, and it just, you know, the super fans are still going to love it and enjoy it, and, you know, it's always going to find an audience somewhere, but, you know, it's not new anymore. I think something along the same lines.
Another good parallel.
So yeah, that's a good question. We'll move on? Or anyone else have influences?
I'm sure I could go on if I could think of anything specific, but I don't have anything.
You'll move on to art?
Yeah, I'll start this off and I'll go ahead and say it. The art is bland, very typical for the era. It doesn't try to do anything new or special. It just is a cartoony take on the original comic versions, and I think some of what the art did was smart by changing the bandana colors of the turtles to make them more recognizable. I think it's consistent. The character models are usually on, even if the coloring isn't, but it's not anything special.
Yeah. I will say that point of differentiating them by color might be a gigantic point that determined their success. Imagine, the Ninja Turtles cartoon comes out. You've already talked about and established how important it is to you. The characters are so iconic, and you know each of them. They're very set in what each character is, and you could determine the main four just on sight alone because of their color. Imagine a world where the only thing different about them visually is their weapons and the letter on their belt. They're all decked out in the same color. In the scene where their weapons are taken away or they don't have their weapons on hand, you can't tell them apart if they're looking away from you. I don't know. The decision to give them each their own color was a big important thing that happened between the transition from comic to cartoon, in my opinion. What do you guys think about that?
You're spot on. It's a stroke of genius on their part.
It would have been a lot more work mentally to differentiate the characters, and I like that they did that.
Yeah, they would have had to be very clever in how they differentiated any characters without using any color whatsoever.
They did it better in other incarnations of the show, right? Because each of the turtles have their own character models, besides just the colors, right? And
Yes.
the color of their shells and the skin and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's neat. It's a shame that they didn't think about doing that earlier, but I guess it's a budget thing, right? If you can just copy and paste one turtle and, flood fill the bandana orange instead of red. I know this is a super over-exaggeration of the job that'd be done, but you know what I mean.
Blood fill. I'm fairly sure they did that by hand.
I know. I was super exaggerating the ease of it, but you know what I mean. If you have a drawing of one turtle, it's a lot less work to just recolor the bandana a different color than draw a totally new turtle with different dimensions and, subtly different costumes.
I think it may have been easier on them as animators to keep things consistent if they had gone with different character models, because then it would be a lot easier to tell.
For the consistency, sure, but it still would have been more work for them, right?
Yeah, early on work. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It would have been early on work in exchange for later work, and I guess once that miniseries had gotten out there, once the miniseries was out there and they weren't sure they were going to commit, they were stuck. Whether or not they wanted to make them different character models, they'd already released 5 very popular episodes with those same designs.
But yeah, for the most part, I agree with you. The art is very iconic of its time, but nothing really stands out. It's very sloppy at times. We already talked about how there's tons of animation errors and stuff like that, but that's also another staple of the time.
Even the title card had a color error. You very frequently see Leonardo with Michelangelo's headband, or either Michelangelo playing with Leonardo's swords. I don't know which. I'm not even sure how that got through without being fixed. It's just a still.
Yeah, it always bothered me as a kid.
That is a very, very good example of just how rampant color errors are in the show. And I won't say that there are a lot of animation errors. I don't think I ever saw any situation of Bebop having 2 arms or anybody
there are
in
animation errors. There's things clipping through each other, stuff not lining up correctly, people not being in the right.
Yeah, there are. I don't think there are any significant ones. They're minor compared to some of the other shows that I've seen of the time.
Oh yeah, but they're there. I had a lot of fun in our viewing. I know you weren't on voice with us, Justin, but you were there. I had a lot of fun noticing the fuck-ups and stuff and going back and rewatching them.
Even in modern shows, you see animation errors, though. I remember I pointed out an animation error when we watched Gravity Falls.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And regular show had a couple as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show, it has errors. Its art is kind of meh, at least to me. What do you guys thought about it?
It was very stylish for what it was. I mean, yeah, it's got some blandness to it. There would be moments where maybe they would blow a big hole in a wall or in the ground or something, and when you look at it, all you see is this blank spot. It's just color. It's got no detail to it. I don't know. Like I said one other time, I'm still trying to figure out why New York had a ninja district. I understand Chinatown or an Asian type of thing, but then you have specifically the Ninja District. Everything is ninja. You have Ninja Restaurant, Ninja Dry Cleaner, Ninja Video Rental. It was just very funny.
Because if you don't want to go to Pizza Hut, you can go to the Ninja Pizza Parlor. Or you can go to the Ninja Dentist.
Ninja Dentist.
Oh, God.
Oh, that would hurt. That would hurt.
No, because you would never know they were there. I'd love to go in and out without you knowing. Okay, so this is not the place to talk about it in this episode, but I'm going to do so anyway. Art and visuals is definitely not the segment for this, but since it's brought up, I'll continue this. So we mentioned briefly the stereotyping in this show. I don't think it's done maliciously, it's done tongue-in-cheek, but there's so much of it. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's upset about this, because the idea, even in the first episode, the scientist said, oh, obviously ninjas took away this machine. How do you know? Because the rope was made in Japan. That's literally the line.
Yeah.
Japan has been replaced in this continuity with an entire nation of nothing but ninjas. There's nothing on Japan but ninjas and a couple sumo dudes. This is the reality that the Ninja Turtles show is in. If you are offended by this, if you have a problem with this,
well, it's definitely a very Western. It's definitely a very Western view of Japanese ideas, right? Because it's a Western comic book made by,
Yeah.
I think that's where that stems from.
I'm happy to say that the franchise very quickly reversed that and started paying a lot of tribute to Japanese ideas and being much more accurate to it, but not the show, and certainly not the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's definitely a reoccurring thing in the first 2 seasons. But yeah, back to art and visuals. Did you have anything to say, Justin?
It's weird because the miniseries has these weird, sudden bursts of really nice looking animation. It'll look kind of maybe a little bland, a little dumpy looking, but then it's all of a sudden Michelangelo will go flying through the air and he looks super detailed. You can see all of his teeth when he's giving his angry face, and Leonardo will slice a foot soldier. And you can see little kind of almost anime sparkle effects and sparks and everything bursting out, or if they're in the Technodrome and Michelangelo is wailing away at some giant robot or something. It's really nicely animated, but those sequences just come in little fit, which I guess it's to save money, of course, but it's just, I never noticed it as a kid, but it's just kind of makes me feel uneven, I guess, because you'll have a scene of them walking through the sewers, looking through the Technodrome, and it looks all right, but like you guys are saying, it may look a little bland, a little static or something, and then all of a sudden it'll kick it up a notch, and the action will hit in, and everything will look really nice, stylish, and detailed for 2 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of shows suffer from that, from the all the budget saved for the action. Thankfully, because that's what we want, especially when we were kids. We want We were there to watch them beat the shit out of each other, or beat up the shit out of the bad guy of the week, or whatever. You know, that's what we're there for. We don't want all the animation budget blown on the talking scenes while they're walking through the sewer on the way to the action. So yeah, that's a thing we see all the time in action-oriented shows.
I did notice one little thing about it that I'm not sure it happens enough to call it a trend or something they do, but something they have done. In a lot of shows with painted backgrounds, you'll know which rock blows up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In Ninja Turtles, you'll know that there's going to be a crack in the ground, but instead of them very blatantly showing which panel the crack will be on by painting it, the entire floor will be painted in on those frames, and you won't know exactly where or when it'll happen. I think that is something that they did in the show that was a little bit above and beyond, or at least a technique that I found a bit refreshing compared to the normal.
Is there a name for that effect where they paint the one object that's going to move? There's got to be a name for it.
Maybe, I don't know. But it's less a trope and less a decision and more of a consequence of how things are animated.
Yeah.
I know
it's
Dragon Ball
definitely
Z
nice.
is notorious for the rock situation.
The way cartoons are made, especially at this time, it was the most efficient way, you know, to have that type of art done to where that effect comes along the way, and that's why it was done so much. It's the most time efficient and money efficient way to do it, so they did it, and it was annoying. But this is a neat middle ground to still take advantage of the methods that are going to save time and money, but not have it take away from the show. So that is a little bit of nice on the side of the art in the show. I'm glad you pointed that part out, because it wouldn't have occurred to me otherwise.
Yeah, I noticed it at least twice. Comes up enough that I noticed, I'll put it that way, that they went that extra mile with what parts of the backgrounds they animated along in cells and which ones they kept as backgrounds.
I was thinking we could transition with one last bit of art, and that would be the intro, because the intro has amazing animation, much to many other cartoons. You know, the animation of the intro will outweigh the rest of the show tenfold.
Yeah, you can put more money into it because you know you're going to reuse it and use it over and over again, you know?
It's typical for a studio to make an intro at a higher budget, but this one really does shine. You're right. It's super iconic to see the shadows of the buildings on the top of the van as it's driving down the street, and the reflection lines glint off the rearview mirror. Those are really highlights.
The art of the intro in specific is just a step above everything else in the show. And by the way, we'll have a link to the intro on YouTube in the show notes like we usually do. So yeah, while we're in music...
the music of the intro, which, is also really iconic.
It's good. The intro theme is good. It gets... maybe it's just because I marathoned it, but I had to skip it a few times. Not gonna lie. There's only so many times I could listen to it, but it's good, yeah. And I love how the intro song gives the little quips about each character right there in the intro. You could tune into the show for the first time, and you have a little bit about what each character already is before even watching the plot of your first episode. That's kind of neat.
The theme song, and in fact most of the music uses this synth pop sound with a little bit of sometimes old B horror movie theme ideas behind it. The original riff sounds menacing and threatening, and then it immediately picks up into this poppy, light, friendly tone. It's energetic. They start off right away by practically chanting the name of the show, just so it gets in your head, okay, this is a mouthful. It's a very complex show name. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just right there, right off, drives it in your head.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a hat.
Which is both smart for marketing and also gives you a chance to process, what the fuck did I just hear?
Besides the intro theme, I really like the music of the show in general. 2 shows in a row that I've really liked the background music more than the more iconic music itself. Maybe not as much as I did in Gundam, but there's a lot of good tracks that play in the background during just various scenes. I'll put a link, by the way. I found a really cool link with just a bunch of the various background music from the show. It's just really well done. I really like it. It goes really well with the various scenes. It's really good with matching what's going on screen, like suspenseful music with the weird suspenseful mystery parts. Battle music with action-packed areas. do a version of the intro theme during like the climactic final battle for the episode usually. The music in itself is really good. It would have been really easy for them to just write one or two songs and stick to them, right? Like some other
Early
shows
on
do.
they did.
Yes, they
in
did.
the first
but
5 episodes, they used that a lot. They used the instrumental version.
once season 2 kicks in, you get a lot more
Yeah.
variance in it, and it's nice. I like it.
I agree. So I'm actually impressed that they spent that much time and budget on extra background music, because background music plays a lot in this show. There are not too many times of just pure silence. I'm not going to say it's noisy or that there's music pollution in spots they don't need it, but they definitely have a lot of background music in each episode, from simple cartoony bumbling notes for some of the human boobs that just act stupid all the time, to poppy themes for when the turtles are in action. To suspenseful themes when there's some tension.
I love the intro. I mean, I loved it as a kid and I still love it. And like, if you were a kid in the 80s and you grew up with this, kids at school were singing the theme song all the time. Like, we would sing it at lunch, in school when we should have been like doing math homework, or like on the playground. I mean, like, it was just one of those things that like resonated with you as a kid. You're just, you know, it's like you said, it's, you know, by design, and it's, you know, you're repeating it. You're not going to watch the intro and immediately forget what it is. You're like, what was that? Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They told you like 5,000 times. But it's a great intro, and I love it. The animation is fantastic, too.
It's a form of brainwashing. Buy more toys. Buy more toys.
But I do like the background music, too. Like, there's one piece of background music I noticed. It sounds kind of like something you would hear in Bleach, like in the early seasons of Bleach, like when they're in, like in Soul Society or something. I was listening, I was like, well, that's weird. Like, that sounds like something you would hear in Bleach.
That's
you know, like,
interesting.
Did we find another influence?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, maybe Ninja Turtles influenced Bleach a little bit.
That's interesting. I don't know anything about Bleach, so I don't have anything to say one way or another on it, but that's interesting.
We'll have to remember that when we get around to watching Bleach.
Yeah, the intro stood out to me the most. I can definitely remember some of the background music, maybe more the little lighthearted bits. But then, yeah, you have this version of the theme song that'll play during all the action scenes, and it really got you going for those parts. Like, you just wanted to see more action, just so you could hear the theme more and more and more.
How about sound effects?
Yeah, I was actually getting into that. Part of the music and sound engineering is also the sound effects. They're surprisingly not super cartoony all the time. And while they're not really, really well done, they're done above par from what I expected of this tone, something this silly. I would have expected a lot of throwings, a lot of bonks, and I don't get a ton of that.
There's a little bit. There's a tiny little bit of it, but it's always like very contained. If they do it, they don't overdo it.
It's always part of a joke. It's always part of a joke.
It's never in the middle of something dramatic going on. But speaking of the sound effects, you only really notice sound effects when they're exquisitely good. Like, oh my god, how did they capture that super realistic sound there to encapsulate that moment? Or when it's super bad. If they're just doing their job okay, it's really easy to just overlook it and skim past it. And I think this is another example of that for me. I wrote in my notes here, sound effects are okay, nothing glaringly bad, but nothing amazing.
They sound awfully stock. I don't know if they bought stock sound effects or had people record them, but nothing feels super, super accurate. They really didn't care that, okay, these are steel weapons. They didn't care that, okay, well, maybe we should get a special thwack for turtle shell. I just used the same one.
And I think in this case, that's kind of okay. I don't know how much having a super, super detailed soundboard for the show would have improved it compared to putting that money into animation or funding another episode entirely or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, guys had much more to say in this category, or
Well,
No.
we need to hit the third part of the sound.
oh, voice
That's
actors.
the voice act. Yes.
Yeah,
We've already talked
I'll
about...
let you lead here.
Yeah, you know I have stuff to talk about, don't you? Okay, so we have Cam Clark, who voiced Leonardo and Rocksteady.
I'm sick of that stupid robot. Everywhere I look, it's Lex.
Some of
this,
you may
Lex
know
that.
him from the 2002 variation of Masters of the Universe, where he played both Adam and He-Man.
I have the power!
Raphael
We're not delivering a
doesn't
baby,
really need an
Gimbo.
introduction, but Rob Paulson, who we will all know as Yakko, Pinky, Dr. Scratch and Sniff, and so many more voices out there. He's one of the greats.
Oh, no, Brain, that would really smart to be bitten on the bottom by a
And he's
greasy
the current,
knot.
he's the current Donatello too.
He is.
Ah, very nice.
Neat.
Relax, I'm not gonna hurt you.
Townsend Coleman
I mean-
plays Michelangelo.
I think so much better on a full stomach. How about we take a pizza break, huh?
For Transformers
pizza
fans,
break.
he's the original Rewind from the G1 cartoon, and he was animated Sentinel Prime, among other roles.
You might feel different when the slime they spew out melts through your armor plating and rots
Barry
your
Gordon
circuits
played
from the
Donatello
inside.
and Bebop.
Well, it's a good thing April left the turtle comm open. Now we can track her down.
He
She's in that
has
building.
not as big of a resume as the others. I think he did more bit parts or live action shows. For cartoons, he did Inky on the Pac-Man cartoon or Captain Marvel Jr.
Man, that's some really random, obscure shit.
Oh, yeah? Well, I got a better idea.
Do you remember an
I'll
episode
hide
of Star
under
Trek
you.
Voyager where the Doctor was trying to get his holo novel published?
I do.
Well, the
Yes.
Bolian publisher that he's dealing with is Barry Gordon. That's Donatello right there, yeah.
You look
Uh,
different, Donatello.
Peter Renaday plays Splinter.
You have forgotten the lessons I taught you, Saki. You can never win. Gentle
He's
always
Grapple
turns
on
away
Transformers
strong.
as well.
Someday I want to build something
And then,
that doesn't get
Pat Fraley
trashed.
was Krang and Baxter Stockman.
Saki, come back here! Twice those turtles defeated you, Saki. I hope you fail again. And again. And keep failing. Until at last you have no choice but to
So you might
give
be
me
surprised
a
to learn that rather than Tim Allen, Pat voices Buzz Lightyear in pretty much all of the Buzz and Toy Story video games.
A crash landed on a strange planet. The impact must have awoken
And
me
yeah,
from
the woman that
hypersleep.
played April has pretty much just only played April.
Huh.
Ninjas, 1,000-year-old clan of assassins. Is it possible they're here in the city? We're at Technology Central to answer that question, for it may be the next target of these mysterious burglars. I'll report as soon as anything develops. April O'Neil, Happy Hour News. Back to you,
I
Jeff.
forget her name already, but yeah, she didn't do very much. April was her most iconic role.
Of course, we already covered the Shredder.
Tonight I dine on
Yes,
turtle
James Avery,
soup.
great. Uncle Phil, always iconic.
Be afraid, Will.
Be very
James Avery is
afraid.
definitely stand out.
Oh,
Yes.
by far. I don't really have anything negative to say about any of the voices. They're all fun to listen to. The voice actors are the ones that really bring the show to life, and they do a good job.
It's
I
a show
congratulate
that's
them on that.
it's meant to be fun first and foremost, and I think if the voice cast had not had fun recording it, that wouldn't have come through at all. Hey guys, this is Dais from the future. We omitted one role that I think Cam Clark shined in, and that's Liquid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. Here, take a listen.
Yes. When the other countries hear about the new weapon, they'll all want to contact us. Washington won't be very happy when we start selling their own system to the highest bidders. Yes, the president will break. He will give in to our demands.
We could probably gush on the voice for a while, but we probably should move on.
All right. Well, next I guess would be my Q&A segment. So I have 4 questions at the moment. The first would be the obvious. Who is your favorite turtle?
Dude, it's Michelangelo.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was Leonardo, followed up close second by Donatello, and Raphael and Michelangelo didn't really register for me. In the new series, I am a huge fan of Michelangelo, so I thought for sure I was going to shift, but I fell right back in Leonardo with a very close second of Donatello, no question. I do like Mikey more than I used to.
When it comes to the cartoon, I initially started out with Leonardo, and then later, as the first NES game came out, this also strengthened my like of Leonardo. He always stood out the most, but close second was Michelangelo, and then as the live action movies came out, Michelangelo took over as my favorite. But Leonardo is always up there for me, with the other two kind of in a very close third.
See, I wouldn't you as a Donatello fan.
I don't know. It's a really hard choice, isn't it? I think Michelangelo is definitely the most fun turtle. But I don't know, Raphael might be my favorite. I like his I like the sarcasm, I like the quippy one-liners. I think right now, the classic 4 out of the 18 episodes I've seen, I'd lean on Raphael as my favorite. Donatello is probably up there too. I have the toy of Donatello, so there's that. Out of what I've seen, I'd say Raphael.
Well, it can help me then transition into my second question of, did you have any Ninja Turtles toys?
Oh, jeez. I had, like, tons and tons of turtle toys. I mean, the first thing I ever really got into as a kid, toy-wise, was the real Ghostbusters. Like, I had a huge amount of Ghostbuster toys. But when this cartoon came along, like, that replaced Ghostbusters totally. And I think for me, Ghostbusters was, like, starting to go on the way out. But anyway, like, yeah, I had a huge mountain of Ninja Turtle toys. I mean, I had all the main characters, the vehicles, play sets. Like, the only things I didn't have, like, I didn't have the sewer layer, and I didn't have the Technodrome.
I did. I had all. I had so many toys. The only ones I really didn't get were the weird spin-off turtles, the big playsets. I didn't get a ton of the vehicles. Obviously, I had a few of the major ones, the blimp, the van. But I was more of a get all the characters as a kid.
So I still have a Ninja Turtle figure. I don't remember where I got it. I think I might have got it from a yard sale when I was a kid or something. I don't remember. I just had it for a long time. It is Donatello, and he's not in his classic uniform. He's kind of wearing this, like, tilly, like he has, like, a strap that connects to his belt. His belt is not the classic purple. Instead, it's, like, black. And he has, like, pouches and stuff that have, like, grenades into his chest, and he has kind of, like, this armor piece on his shoulders. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you guys, and maybe you guys can help me identify it.
Okay.
But it's pretty cool. I like having it. It's just something I've had for a long time. I never went out of my way and collected him because he was a Ninja Turtle. It was just something I had. And now I'm glad I have it because I have a little bit more context on it. But yeah, I have a Ninja Turtle toy, to answer your question.
When I was growing up, I think I had one or more of the original Turtles. I'm fairly certain the last one I at least had possession of was Michelangelo out of the primary 4. But I believe I sold off the main ones. To this day, I still have Detective Donatello with his briefcase and black slice of pizza that's all charcoaled and burnt. I have a foot soldier. Back in the early 90s, I had the mutating Raphael. So it was a baby turtle that you could then transform into the mutant version. Sadly, my Raphael was stolen from me. I did confront the kid, but his mother wound up siding with him, and I never saw it again. I can remember other toys. Yeah, I can remember other toys like the skateboard. You would push the button and this big foot would pop out from the bottom. That was always fun. So, yeah, I had a few. Still have a couple. My third question is, if you can remember out of the 18 episodes we watched, what was your favorite turtle disguise?
I really liked when they pretended to be pizza delivery men and then decided to kick the door in and just beat the shit out of them anyway. Like, there was a couple times they did that. They're like, we're going to go to this big elaborate ruse, and then as soon as we get there, throw it all to the side and just kick the shit out of the bad guys anyway. Like, we didn't need the ruse. We just...
For me, I think in the miniseries, there was one where each one was dressed differently. Like one of them was dressed like Elvis, one had like a bomber jacket, and the other one like was dressed like a punk. Like I thought that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with him. Section where they didn't know what the hell they were doing and dressed up as caricatures of humans.
I think my favorite is when they tried to disguise themselves as construction workers. They had the gray jumpsuit, the helmets, the yellow helmets, and then these very fake brown beards on.
No love for the classic trench coat and fedora, though.
Yeah, with the very eerie white human mask that they would sometimes wear along with it.
We'll move on to supplemental media.
Yeah.
There's lots of it. Lots.
Oh yeah. Like again,
Movies,
this is one of
video
those
games, comic books, crossovers.
Yes.
Yes.
You name it, it
We'll
had
never-
Ninja Turtles.
I was doing just a basic Google image search for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I very quickly scrolled down and saw some bizarre merchandise. There's everything. There's underwear. There's furniture.
Yeah,
there's
but do they?
shoes.
Does this fit here though? Like, is this media?
It's not media, but it's important to note how much merch. There's likely a different set of party balloons released every year.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much merchandise related to this show.
Yeah, like I'm going to throw in Ninja Turtles hot dogs that I once had back in the mid-90s. It was basically a typical hot dog, but with pizza flavoring mixed in. And it kind of tasted like a pizza.
That sounds vile.
They weren't around long.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ice cream was iconic.
Yeah, that was great.
It had that shape of the turtle head, that gross black bandana, the misplaced eyes.
Didn't a lot of like random cartoon characters and toys get weird ice creams?
Yes, there is a SpongeBob one that has become a meme over the years that you can probably find online. Just look it up. It looks like the face is literally just melting off. It's something from your horror dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest one that I think stood out for me was the video games, though. In the first 8 years that Ninja Turtles was around, we had 20 games.
Holy shit.
Yeah, spanning from Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Amiga, Commodore 64, various handhelds, Game Boy, Tiger, etc. Like, they were everywhere.
This is before mobile games, too. You couldn't just put out some shovelware mobile game. People paid money for every one of these games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, I guess the most iconic originally being the first NES title, which many consider to be one of the hardest Ninja Turtles games ever made.
I don't think that's the most iconic. I think Turtles 2 and Turtles in Time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Most iconic.
The first one, a lot of people like to compare it to the cartoon, considering that the video game came out 2 years later. What a lot of people don't notice is that the video game is more influenced to the comic and has a few cartoon elements thrown in, such as the colored bandanas, Bebop and Rocksteady, but a lot more of it is comic-based. Like, if you look at just the video game cover, you'll see the 4 turtles with red bandanas fighting off what appear to be robots. But if you actually look up the very, the full image, you will see that they are actually fighting a variety of Krang in their robotic bodies.
Huh.
So Krang technically does appear in the video game. You just don't really notice it because there's so many of them.
After the first game, they went into the second game, which is much, much more based on...
Yeah, on the cartoon. It started out with an arcade game, was then later ported to the NES and other systems.
Wonderful game.
Amazing game. And then that animation style of the arcade game would then transfer over to Turtles in Time that was on the Super Nintendo.
Well, you skipped a couple games. There was the Manhattan Project on the NES, which was kind of a follow-up to Turtles 2, the same style of beat-em-up as the others. It just didn't get noticed as much. There was also this Arcade Fighter, which released on Super Nintendo and NES, which wasn't very good. Ninja Turtles worked a lot better as a beat-em-up.
When it came to the NES titles, I actually think the third game was my favorite.
I've never actually played any of them, but I'm curious, Justin, do you play many video games?
Yeah, I've played most of the ones the guys are talking about for like NES, and I think I would back up Airhammer. Like, I always liked Manhattan Project the best.
Yeah, it has an amazing soundtrack.
I guess another point to go with supplemental media is there's a lot of other continuities. There's the Origin comic that we've discussed. There's the newer IDW comic, which is its own thing. There's the 2003 Turtles. There's the Next Mutation series that was live action. There's the first 3 live action movies. There's the CG sequel-ish movie. There's the 2 new Michael Bay produced live action movies. There's the 2012 CG series. I'm probably missing stuff. There were stage shows, musicals.
Oh, I want to say this now because it's a thought I had, and I wanted to ask it earlier when it was brought up, but I didn't want to interrupt. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but you reminded me. That crossover that Ninja Turtles did with Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Is that like its own Ninja Turtles continuity, or is it supposed to be the Ninja Turtles from this continuity, but in like live action form? Or are they supposed to be the Ninja Turtles from the movies?
It's
Next Mutation.
Yeah, Saban attempted to do a live-action version called The Next Mutation, in which a 5th turtle called Venus de Milo, a female, travels to New York and joins them. Shortly in, though, they are basically brought out of the sewers by Astronema from Power Rangers in Space, brainwashed, and they attempt to take over the Astro Mega ship. Eventually, they break the spell, help the Power Rangers, and then go back to what they were doing. The show itself...
Any good?
No. The creators or something, I forget exactly who, has stated that it is probably the worst thing they've ever done to the franchise and want to erase it from history.
I kind of want to watch it now, to be honest.
Venus, of course, being the aforementioned 5th turtle. This is the only media she's ever appeared in, to my knowledge. She has light blue. I think she has kind of magical powers about her, and she has...
It just sounds like such a train wreck that I want to. I genuinely want to watch it now.
She has turtle boobs as part of her shell.
You sold me. Turtle boobs.
Yeah.
It's the final part of the train wreck.
When Kevin Eastman, one of the co-creators of the Turtles, and he's like a producer of the current 2012 series. When he was asked if Venus de Milo will ever appear on the new series, he was very blunt about it, and he said no, categorically no, never, 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 ever, ever.
Wow.
So that tells you his feelings about the character.
That's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
It sounds like a train wreck.
Single episode. Never even tried to watch it. Never had any interest in watching any of it. Didn't even sample.
I know I lost interest very quickly. I may have only watched 3 episodes.
I have no doubt that
I
it's
don't
terrible,
remember
but
them.
I like campy, terrible stuff a lot of times, so...
Oh yes, this is camp to the extreme.
I'm intrigued, just for the shittiness of it. Well, you guys want to move on?
Yeah, what do we have? Favorite episode?
My first choice for favorite episode was kind of cheaty, because I kind of chose all 5 episodes of the first season.
It's
I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
For me, I chose out of just the episodes I watched. So I chose the first 5 episodes for the first season. And if I couldn't skate by with that, I was going to choose Season 2, Episode 12, Enter the Fly. Because it was just one of the more iconic episodes. Bebop and Rocksteady become more involved in the everyday episodes because they're out of Dimension X. And Baxter is turned into the Fly. Lots of stuff happens. I really enjoyed that one. So, what were your guys' favorites? Do you have a favorite, like, super iconic episode that you guys love?
Well, like you, I would say that the first 5 really stand out to me, if not just the first 2. Out of what else we watched, I would say the first episode of the second season stood out to me simply because we have Shredder trying to regain his forces since Krang won't give him any, so he creates the Crooked Ninja Turtle gang led by Optimus Prime.
Amazing. A booby trap that actually catches boobies.
Sorry, that was Peter Cullen. Yeah.
That was enjoyable too.
But it was the Alien episode with the meatballs on the pizza that has probably stood out the most to me out of the first 2 seasons, simply because I saw it the most as a kid. So that one stands out a lot.
What about you, Dais?
For me, it was Splinter No More. I think any episode that focuses on Splinter, by default, gets my attention. I think that he's a really interesting character, and when they focus on his past life as a human and shed light on that, it becomes a really interesting episode to me, especially the contrast of him as a mutant versus him as a human. I thought that was a really good one. I wish they would have revisited some of those ideas later.
Nice choice. How about you, Justin?
If I had to pick just one from what we watched, probably the Catwoman from Channel 6. And I know that's probably kind of a bizarre episode to choose, but it's just so much fun. And it's like a B movie. I mean, because it's so bizarre. It's basically, April and this cat get caught in a transporter from Star Trek. And April slowly turns into this, weird cat feline woman. And Shredder, takes control of her with a collar, no less, because she's a cat. And is, giving her these mental commands to, track down Splinter and annihilate him. And if that's not crazy enough, she, on her own, decides to release a tiger, and it assists her. I mean, that's a wacky episode.
I love all the episodes you guys chose. It really was kind of hard. There's so few episodes we watched for this viewing, but a lot of them are really damn good. I will say that. So, those are all good choices. What did you have a favorite outside the scope of this episode that you really liked?
Yeah, I always liked Planet of the Turtleoids, which is a 2-part episode. Well, it originally aired as an hour-long special. I liked it because they, kind of like you were saying earlier, they don't bat an eye at an alien. Well, in this special, they go to another planet that's full of other talking turtles. Good. What I really liked is it introduced a lot of new characters. What I was telling you earlier, when I was a kid, I was excited to see characters that I own their action figure. This introduced a bunch, Ground Chuck, Dirtbag, Chrome Dome. I think they're the samurai guy, Tattoo showed up. There was a bunch of characters introduced in the special, and I was like, ooh, I've got that guy. Ooh, I got that guy too. I just remember being really excited.
That's awesome. I never really had that experience with any show that I never really collected a lot of toys for any particular show I watched. So I'm kind of jealous of that.
Going back real quick to the Catwoman from Channel 6, there was one part of that episode that really struck me as just golden. When April let the tiger out and it chased the turtles down into the city, they escaped from it and just let it run loose on the city like idiots. That bit them in the ass because it instantly tracked down Splinter and cornered him. That was their fault. They should have really contained that. That could have solved a lot of their trouble later on. They were just being stupid about it and irresponsible, not superheroes, and that's what became of it.
Yeah, what kind of superhero leaves a tiger to roam around New York?
But you know what? It worked out just fine because they had a cage already prepared for whatever reason in the sewer.
Yeah,
we never get around to the fact about how fucking gross it is that they live in the sewer, and that April's just totally okay with going down there all the time, hanging out. Sure, I'll hang around in this shit show of a house.
Well, like I said, it's a caricature of 1980s New York. It's probably just as sanitary as anywhere else.
Fair enough.
We'll go with that.
So you guys want to move on to final thoughts?
Sure.
Who wants to lead us out?
I'll split mine up between the first and the last. How about that? So I would recommend this to anyone who was either stoned, had a young child with them, or had a friend to sit around with and joke about it. I think watching the episode solo, I didn't really enjoy sitting there just watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles solo as an adult. When I had friends around, it worked. I'm sure a kid would get a kick out of it, and I'm sure if you were stoned, it would help your disposition.
Oh, definitely.
I was not stoned.
I was.
Well, okay, see, there you go. Proof positive. It helps if you're stoned, because I wasn't, and he was, and I had a hard time watching a couple of those episodes. So, yeah.
See, my final thoughts, I'm not a gigantic Ninja Turtles fan leaving this. I might go in and watch more of the original series. I'm much more excited, though, to watch the other iterations of Turtles with more continuity, more meaning between the events of each episode. It's not that I don't like episodic content. I do. It's just I'm more interested in a more complex story that you could tell than just what you could tell in one episode. But that being said, I did enjoy watching these episodes quite a lot, and part of that was the experience. Sitting around, I was non-ashamedly stoned out of my mind while watching a lot of episodes, but at the same time, that's not all of it. I sat around and hung around on voice chat and on text chat, watching the show with a bunch of friends, and if you can enjoy the show that way, it brings a lot more to it. I had a lot of fun, like I said earlier, going back and, oh, look at all the stupid errors that we found. Oh, look at that stupid little bit. Isn't that fun to watch? I had a lot of fun pointing out the ridiculous shit with friends on voice chat. So for me, the show was a really fun experience with friends, so I'll have that to go with it. The show itself, Yeah, it's pretty fun. I might watch some more in the future if I have time. How about you guys, Airhammer?
Yeah, it's one of those just really big cultural icons. It was a part of my childhood. I forget exactly when I stopped watching it, but I don't know. It's worth checking out. First season, obviously. After that, it starts to get really weird because there are so many different themes. The randomness with the crystal, and then every episode after that, just kind of having a different movie theme to it. I'm sure it gets better after that. I can't remember much from season 3 and up. Characters always stood out to me more. So yeah, Chrome Dome and all the others, Dirtbag and so forth. Like I remember more of the characters from the video games than seeing them in the cartoon. So I guess I had more impact from the video games thanks to the cartoon. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay. How about you, Justin?
Well, I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan. Like I said, it just kind of hooked me at that right age, and it's something that I always check out. Whatever form it's came back in, whether it's live action movies, CGI series, live action TV show, whatever it is. If it's Ninja Turtles, I'm going to check it out. It's been a while since I sat down and watched the first 2 seasons, so I was really kind of happy to just sit down and chill out and watch these. And, I loved them as a kid. And as an adult, I can appreciate them in different ways. It's kind of like the Adam West Batman series. Like, that's something I loved as a kid because it was so creative and imaginative. And it's something that I can appreciate, as an adult in a totally different way, just for, like, the cheese and goofiness of it. Like, that's how I feel about this original Turtles series.
Nice.
Before I bring us out, I'd like to just thank you, Justin, for joining us as a guest. Would you like to plug your podcasts?
Sure. You can find the Fanholes at fanholespodcast.blogspot.com. We have a Facebook and Twitter account. You can find us on Stitcher Radio and iTunes. And, you can also send us a good old-fashioned email at fanholespodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, this episode was part of a collaboration with the Fanholes and the Bored with Friends podcast covering Ninja Turtle stuff. So we'll have links to all those episodes of their podcasts as well. They covered the Ninja Turtles crossover comic book with Batman. They covered the Ninja Turtles board game. What was the other one?
On Big in Japan, we covered the anime OVA Legend of the Super Mutants.
So yeah, there's lots of Ninja Turtles content stuff around. There'll be links. How do you guys want to take it out?
I've got.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
The shift from Irma being an annoying joke character to a legitimate potential date speaks volumes about the downward plunge my life has taken over the last 30 years.
Oh, God.
Okay.